Hello, lovelies. There's a tendency amongst people to think that things from back in the day are better in every way. Typically, you will find a lot of people lionising the games of their youth, the supplements of their youth, the books of their youth. This is an older book, 1991 release. It was $20 US exactly on release in 1991. That would be the equivalent of about $50 today, just so you know, thereabouts. And this book is bullshit. If I'd paid $50 out for this, I would be extremely annoyed and upset and even angry, possibly even to the point of sending a letter to Dragon magazine or something. This is for AD&D 2nd edition, and it is supposed to be a tome of magic to take your spellcasters to limits they've never reached before, with over 200 new spells and magical items. The Tome of Magic stretches the horizons of every wizard and priest in the AD&D 2nd edition game. In these pages are new forms of wizard magic, including elementalists, meta magic, and wild magic, plus expansions of existing schools. For priests, whole new spheres have been discovered, spheres of chaos, law, numbers, thought, time, war, and wands, so what you might think of as domains today, and powerful new quest spells lie waiting to be tapped. All characters will experience the thrill of discovering new magic items, such as the Claw of Magic Stealing, Dimensional Mine, Crystal Parrot, Ring of Randomness, and Staff of the Elements. Tome of Magic is an invaluable expansion for all the spellcasting classes. Lies. Lies and treason. Alright, it does contain over 200 spells, but this is somewhat misleading, as many of those 200 spells are reskins, essentially, of other spells, which is to be expected to a large degree anyway. I mean, there's only so many ways of doing things that you can invent and create and put in. That is why I tend to prefer games where the magic is a bit more freeform, or there are robust rules for coming up with your own spells. That seems to me to be a better way to go about it in some ways, rather than waiting on Wizards of the Coast, or in this case TSR, to come out with a book that lists new spells. It would be far better to have guidance for making your own spells and that sort of thing. Quest spells are kind of interesting in that they are spells that form the basis of a quest. Like, maybe you need to do the quest in order to fulfill the requirements for the spell, or to gather the ingredients for the spell, or the spell creates an effect that creates a quest. So that's kind of like a scale matter, which can be interesting. The additional schools, specializations, and so on aren't that much of a big deal, because existing spells already fit into those molds. And the 200 spells sounds like a lot, but it isn't really. It just takes a lot of space in a lot of cases, because the old formatting for spells tended to be a little bit long-winded. But when you see what 200 actually sort of entails, which is like a single page of wizard spells, it doesn't really amount to that much. You know, there are already spells that characters hardly ever choose or hardly ever cast, right? And so merely adding quantity, especially when a lot of them are cloned effects of existing spells, just with slight tweaks, yeah. But then, maybe I'm wrong. After all, our friend Jim Raji put out a book that is all variations on Magic Missile. So, yeah, maybe I'm wrong there, but I don't think I am particularly. A saving grace is a clean, relatively simple layout and nice colour plates. Though I would say that, I mean, 1991, we're getting on towards the kind of fag end of D&D, where the wind has been knocked out of the sails and doom stalks the corridors. So maybe the artists were feeling a bit disinterested and half-hearted at the same time, because not all of the art is particularly up to snuff, even the nice big colour plates. But the fact that they seem kind of half-assed, I mean, look at the faces on these lot, and yet still put current era Wizards artwork to shame, that says something as well. So yeah, the priest spells is a single page as well. There are, it must be said, more priest spells, which perhaps is a bit misleading when you think about a tome of magic, because theurgy is rather different to thaumaturgy. So this was maybe marginally more worthwhile for clerics and holy casters of all kinds, but I still remain not convinced, because a lot of it is variations or expansions or twists on existing spells again. So not a huge amount of value there. And domains never seemed to be quite as important back in the day. See, I should be all over this picture. We've got some kind of demonic hound thing, we've got priestesses, we've got a half-naked cleric casting the magic, but it doesn't do much for me. At least it is dramatic and there is action going on, and just kind of sexual, apart from the face. You know, at least there's that. What else can we find here to talk about? Not a lot, and that's the other part of the problem, because for the most part it is really just a big list of spells, which is kind of dull. The new schools and spheres of arcane and divine magic fail to be particularly interesting or to expand the game in any particular way. Rules for making your own spells would have been would have been nice. Researching them and putting them together, that sort of thing, or asking your god for some new spell. There's a Coldwell, that's a bit better. You know, that side of things might have been interesting, but no. It's not a tome of magic, it is a tome of spells. Now there are some magic items, some additional magic items here, but the problem with these is always fitting them into the existing tables, or revising the existing tables. That's not something that was really easy to do, sort of pre-internet or whatever. Online tools these days are often better for randomly generating magic items, because they can incorporate all of those extra books and ideas. Of the whole book, this is perhaps the slightly more interesting section, particularly if you run a magic item heavy sort of campaign. These sorts of things are a bit more interesting, and there's a nice variety of them, and they genuinely do different things. Some of them are a bit pointless, like the Crystal Parrot, which is essentially just a reskin of other stuff again. But so my overall point here is that just because something is old doesn't mean that it's good, and just because something is new doesn't mean that it's better in any way either. These are both fallacies, right? Fallacy of tradition, fallacy of novelty. Just because something is old and has been around a long time doesn't make it good. Just because something is new and modern doesn't make it better either. But yeah, if I paid $50 for this, I would be livid. It's just not that good. Alright, this might be a look back to older stuff, it might be a know your role, but I still give things scores. In terms of style, I mean, it's not a stylish book in any way, shape or form. It is just clean and presentable, which is something, you know, and it still retains that old school look, even though this was into the 90s. right, when things were looking a bit more ornamental, sometimes overwrought, but also more presentable. The artwork, the spot illustrations are nice and good. The full plate artwork is a bit lazy, but it's better than anything we see today. Even so, the whole thing feels just kind of thrown together and half-assed. As such, I can't award it more than 3, but I think it's as good or slightly better than current Wizards material, which is like industry standard, you could say. In terms of substance, if you look at it one way, it seems like there's a lot, but it's illusory. So maybe it should have been called the Tome of Illusion, because there really isn't as much here as it makes it appear to be, and it is, after all, only about 160 pages for the equivalent of $50, albeit hardback in an old school style. So substance-wise, I cannot justify giving it more than a 2, because it's all smoke and mirrors. The actual substance isn't there once you start digging into it, and there isn't much here that is going to see much use in most campaigns, even wizard-centric campaigns or even cleric-centric campaigns. It's just pointless for the most part. There are better, more general ways that they could have gone about it. I think this kind of exemplifies sort of late era TSR desperation, half-assing it, rushing things, and little wonder that they slipped from the top slot back then, and little wonder that they're slipping from the top spot right now. There you go. So that was 5 out of 10, 2.5 out of 5. Average is actually around 3, so below average, and it lies to you, which is the real problem. In fact, I would probably knock it off at least another half a point, just for how disappointed it made me feel. Zang.
Colony Moon is a cooperative or competitive story game about founding a moon colony, making it succeed and opening up the rest of the solar system for exploration. Players take on the parts of the board and make decisions about the future of the colony, expending political capital and gaining prestige when their plans work. Available at post-mort.com, lulu.com for print, and drive-through RPG.